Hello, thank you for listening to my TED Talk. My name is Zac Campbell, and today we'll be reviewing The Nazi Seizure of Power by William Allen. In The Nazi Seizure of Power, we follow the story of a small town located in Hanover Germany named Northiem. And Allen does a very good job of describing how this town, in the span of 3 years, from 1930 to 1933, becomes fully radicalized by the Nazi power, or the Nazi Party. He uses a variety of points, but I believe the three main points that we were able to get out of this is one, economic, two, class, and three, after the Nazis come to power and how they're able to consolidate social atomization. So, this is important to us as historians because if we were able to understand how the Nazis operated on a small local town basis, then we can figure out what tactics they had to use, what influences they had, and how they were able to transition that into a large-scale basis. Now, Northiem was not a big town by any means. It was a small town located, as I said, in Hanover, where you could go to one end of the town, look through the middle, and see the other end. Now, this is important, I believe, because it gave the German in the town of Northiem a sense of comfort, a sense of relief that nothing bad would happen, and they were able to know what was going on in their town at all times. Now, in 1930, as I said, the Depression came along, but the men and women in Northiem were not affected very much by this depression because their main sense of income was that of agriculture, not industry. And if we know from history, mainly towns with a high industrialized income, those are the ones that were affected the most by the depression. But these economic features helped facilitate the growth and strength of the Nazism after the depression. But when the Nazis came into Northiem, they used this fear of the depression, or this longing, like in the back of everybody's minds. They were hearing the stories of this depression, and they didn't want that to happen to them. So the Nazis knew this, and they harped on these ideas of this fear by offering ideas and basically speaking out against the depression and ideas of what they would do. And this helped garner some more notoriety of the Nazi Party, because before they were not very much taken into effect. They were kind of shrugged off as being this far-right radicalized party. And when they started preaching these ideas of the fear and the ideas that they had, it kind of gave them some more spotlight. Now, Allen also describes to us these class divisions, and the class structure of Northiem was primarily made up of the middle and lower classes. I believe it was around a 66, 67 percentile that made up the entire class structure of Northiem. And the middle class wanted this abolishment of the class structure. They didn't like it. They wanted it gone. They wanted it to be more rigid. And the Nazis had this idea and were publicly speaking about destroying the class division and how it was supposed to be abolished by force, that they were going to get rid of it entirely and build anew. And I think many Nordheims, especially in the middle class, were very attracted to this idea, and they wanted to see the success of the Nazi Party, so they were very eager to join them. Now, it was also this idea of a vague appeal to a new society and the ideology of it that also attracted many men and women in the Nordheim to the Nazi Party. They wanted this idea that was very vague, very still forming, that many people could still offer their input and their insight onto what they thought it would be and to how it would be built up. So they wanted basically to get rid of the old system and bring in the new. They wanted to see this class abolishment gone and this class structure gone and this new society come in. Now, going back to economics again, it was during this time period that there was the depression of the middle class because of these tight credits and the raised taxes. And these two main factors helped stimulate further growth of the Nazi Party. They were tired of being taxed, and they wanted less of a tight credit. They wanted their tight credit that was being placed on them to be gone. And when the Nazis were hearing more about this and what they were seeing, they knew that their earlier propaganda, which wasn't that much of a success, they knew they had to change it. And or more along the targets of who their propaganda was affecting. And they knew that they had to appeal more to the businessmen and shop clerks because that was the people that were feeling the most constricted by these tight credits and raised taxes. So the propaganda that they were making now appealed to these businessmen and shop clerks, while also attacking the economic policy. Now, whenever the Nazis would give a speech, they always picked a speaker and a message that would produce a good turnout. They were not rigid in what they would always talk about. They were very flexible and adaptable to what they needed to say to garner the most in crowd, the most appeal to their party. So if one speech they talked about economic policy and it garnered 18,000 men and women coming in, and then they talked about anti-Semitism, which garnered maybe 15 people, they would stick more towards this economic policy and go forward with it. Now, this is a quote from the page on 32 that describes not only the physical presence of the Nazi Party, but also the feelings that they invoked in men and women. They appeared hard-driven and dedicated, and one is quoted saying that the ranks of the NSDAP were filled with people who were for social justice and opposed unemployment. And the speaker later goes on to say that she was driven by the feelings of strength and strong pride. Again, this is on page 32 if you want to take a look. And it was these feelings of physical characteristics and appeals that made the Nazi Party more and more appealing to the middle class and to the and to the men and women of Northiem. Now, there was also a man named by the name of Wilhelm Spanos, who was a local leader of the town. He was well respected and well liked by the members of Northiem. And when he declared his, I guess you could say, declared his appraisement of the Nazi Party and was willing to follow them, many people in the Nazi town, not Nazi town, but Northiem, were willing to follow the Nazi Party because of Wilhelm, because he was such a respected leader, by thinking that if Wilhelm is willing to follow him, how bad can this Nazi Party be? So there was also the aspect of trying to win over key members of the town so that they would have this follow-up. And they would also appeal to the religious movement, or the religious aspect in Northiem, which was primarily Lutheran. Now, even though the class structure of Northiem was constantly fluctuating, the religious movement, or the religious aspect, was the thing that tied them all together. And if they would ever have a religious speak, they would bring in a Lutheran speaker, and who was a member of the Nazi Party, to kind of garner all the Lutherans, which was a huge majority of Northiem, to the speeches. Now, the SPD, which was the Social Democratic Party in Northiem at this time, was caught in a very tight spot. They didn't know what to do because they were constantly fighting off both the SPD and the KPD, who joined forces at this time. And they were in this tight spot of what do we do, what can we do? So they were very, very ineffective during this time period to stop anything that the Nazis wanted. Now, the Nazis also balanced their image very, very well. They balanced their persona of violence and political. They appear violent in some inches, but also appear very, very polite and strong-driven and unified in others. So they were contrasting, and they only let people see what they wanted them to see. Now, when the Nazi Party elect was brought in and Hitler was reigned in as Chancellor in 1933, that's when the Nazis started becoming more and more vicious. They were willing to have raids on SPD members' houses and incarcerate and charge them and throw them in prison. And this was a way of systematically eliminating the SPD image. And it got rid of the head of the SPDs, so they were consolidating their power and getting rid of anybody that might oppose them. There was this quote saying that the social democracy says that they do not know what this government will do, and this is located on page 192. And by the summer of 1933, the Nazis had broken up and altered the clubs and organizations by this contest of social atomization, which is getting rid of the head of one club and filling it with the head of a Nazi leader, so that way they're able to control all aspects of the town. So either you're with us, which is mass relationship, everybody is a Nazi, or you're not, and you're staying at home and not voicing your opinion and not altering what they wanted them to say. And it was also went by another name, by the name of Gleichschaltung, which was the German name for social atomization at this time. So in conclusion, what I really want you guys to take away from this, the key main aspects that Alan wants you guys to know, was the Northiem Nazis created their own image. They were active among division, and they were active upon destroying the class lines. The Depression was the main radicalization of the town, which basically sparked the ignition of the Nazis coming to power. The Nazis presented themselves as a unified and vigorous alternative to the social methods that were there already. And the propaganda played a huge amount in Northiem. So thank you guys for listening to my TED Talk, and I hope you enjoyed it.